So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second half of our TOFS event, the Adult Working Group, Making a Difference for Those Born with OA TOF. I, like many of you, was born with OA TOF, and when I was asked to talk about this, I was a little apprehensive. There's so much lived experience here in this room, so much that I can learn from you. You're all experts by your own experience, which I believe is the current terminology. You know your medical conditions, and that's already been discussed with the previous speaker. You recognise your symptoms, you know your bodies, and as such you should have your opinions listened to and valued by the healthcare professionals you come into contact. As adults with this rare and complex condition, we've all walked different paths, and yet our journeys are connected through the health challenges that we've faced along the way. I realise that I'm fortunate to have reached my mid-60s, relatively unscathed by the surgeries and medical interventions that are needed in the early days and weeks of my life. Of course, the same cannot be said for all born with OA and TOF, and despite advances in 21st century medicine, some TOFs continue to face multiple health challenges. On a personal note, I'd like to thank TOF's organisation, Diane and Sue, who've obviously represented us for many, many years. They've helped me on my journey, and particularly during the past few years when senior adulthood has presented with increasing health challenges. Thank you. This slide, I hope you don't mind me sharing this a little bit about Mr. Keith Roberts. He was born 100 years ago in 1923. When I was transferred from the midwifery unit in Shropshire to Birmingham Children's Hospital, Mr. Roberts was a surgical registrar who performed my first operation. In the early 1960s, Mr. Roberts initiated the development of the special operating theatre and the first 2 intensive care beds for children at Birmingham Children's Hospital, things that we take for granted now. In the 1980s, I was a staff nurse working in the intensive care unit at Birmingham Children's Hospital. And at that time, Mr. Roberts was in charge of the unit, and I was very fortunate to work with him. I recently looked, as we often do, we Google, I looked him up, and his obituary states he undertook outstanding pioneer surgery on newborn infants with Tracheo-Oesophageal Fistula. I thank him for saving my life in 1957, when I believe that more than 90% of infants died. On this slide here, my parents, in the middle there, they were just 17 years old. No car, no telephone, and now me 60 miles away. Those were the days of restricted visiting, and parents were often told to expect the worst, that their babies were unlikely to survive. And I expect some of you can relate to this sadness, yet despite all the adversity placed in our paths, we're here to share our stories and support each other as we move forward. So fast forward to 2021. As you are aware, Diane, on behalf of, this is obviously me there, on behalf of the TOFS trustees, approached a small group of adults to form a support group to look at the issues that the adults are facing. It's important to bear in mind that most of us had never met in person, and our 4 weekly contacts would be achieved via Zoom. Non-verbal cues can be very difficult to pick up in these situations. We had to work collaboratively. The members needed to establish links, not merely emails and Zooms, but personal links of trust, of respect, of listening to and valuing each other's opinions. In the autumn of 2021, our first project was to look at the TOFS Management Handbook, an invaluable book written by Dr. Caroline Love, who is with us today. The task was relatively easy because there's an immense amount of detail in the handbook for us to choose. However, condensing it into this booklet for TOFs to read and share with their healthcare providers was a little challenging. But by the end of 2021, we'd together written Improving Health Outcomes, which I think there's some copies on the table if you've not seen it. The booklet recognises that being born with OA TOF can have complex, lifelong consequences, and that sometimes medical professionals do not understand the many aspects of this condition. It's been produced to help adults and TOFs move into adult services and get the best possible care from their health providers. And the booklet's also available to download from the website. So taking us forward from 2021, a brief overview of what we've achieved to date and the plans that we've got for the next few months. It became apparent that despite having a lot of TOF information on banners to display at conferences, the adult health issues could be displayed more in detail if we produced our own banners. And I think that they're here and in the foyer as well. These banners have been taken to different medical conferences, the British Society of Paediatric Gastroenterology, Hepatology and Nutrition, the British Thoracic Society Conference in Manchester, Association of Upper GI Specialists in Aberdeen, and the British Society of Gastroenterology Esophageal meeting more recently in Liverpool. So we are trying to spread the word that this is not purely a paediatric problem. As TOFS representing the organisation, we've had the opportunity to engage with many professionals, some of whom were a little perplexed, thinking TOF was a malformation of birth and corrected in childhood. I think it's fair to say they were interested in the information we shared with them. This is a lifelong condition with, for some people, very debilitating health problems. I recall a team of physiotherapists and nurses who care for children and young adults with cystic fibrosis, being amazed that some adults with TOF have very similar health issues as their adult patients, but that we don't have wrapped around services. Next. TOFS was also represented at the International Network of Esophageal Atresia Conference in Cincinnati, in IWEA. Several adults were asked to produce short videos to share at this event, and the personal story of an adult TOF was produced on a poster to share with the conference attendees. Together, raising awareness of the complex health issues which can affect us into adolescence and adulthood, reminding specialists we're not all fixed at surgery. Next one, please. During the TOFS Awareness Week in February of this year, a few adults shared videos of their experiences, and these are also available on the TOFS website. At the same time, a TOFS pocket-sized health passport has been produced by the Adult TOF Working Group, and this was launched. This enables TOFs to record personal medical information in a compact format. Again, easy to share with the healthcare providers. Next one, please. Alongside these achievements, the adult coffee catch-up sessions were being held. This was an idea from Alison Smith, who suggested giving adult TOFs across the globe the opportunity to chat informally. We're now connected with Australia, New Zealand, Canada, the USA, as well as obviously more locally in the UK. It's very important to say that these coffee chats are facilitated by TOFs, but only those born with a condition can actually enter the room and have a conversation. The conversations are confidential, and only issues which the group feel comfortable sharing are passed on to Diane via Alison, who's here today. Recently, there have been discussions about the things which make life easier for us, and we've had quite a few giggles about them, really. Members of the coffee chat identified electric beds, food blenders, particular backrests, inflatable pillows, lots of other items. Plus, of course, the numerous items they need when they take a trip away from home, including their medications and sometimes nutritional supplements. I entitled it, in the early days, AIDS and Adaptations, which I appreciate is far too medical a term, and that comes from my nursing background. And I'm pleased to say that Alison has offered to find a more appropriate, user-friendly title. The outcome of the chat is that Alison's gathering information to write an article for Chew. So if you have any tips, pillows, bedding, blenders, etc., please pass on to Alison, who's here at the front. Good opportunity to network with her. So what I'd like to say here is that the Adult TOF Working Group encourages everyone to be involved. So we have set members who meet every 4 weeks, but anyone who's got a special interest, want to raise a subject that we can explore further, then please just come forward. We welcome everybody. And it's about making a difference. It's not just sharing medical information, which is, of course, incredibly important, but useful daily living tips. Our most recent project has been the VACTERL booklet, Congenital Anomalies Occurring with OA TOF. This actually started from a spark of an idea. The group members were chatting about OA TOF, and it became apparent that more than 30% of the members have additional anomalies, and some of them quite significant anomalies. So this booklet really provides information for those born with rare and complex conditions and seeks to help the healthcare providers understand the anomalies and how they actually impact on each other, and identifies the lifelong nature of these congenital problems and how we're not always fixed at surgery. It also identifies the need for high-quality transition from children's services to adult services, and endorses the need for multidisciplinary collaborative care pathways to improve health outcomes. The booklet is available, it's just been launched, it's available here today, hard copies, and will be available on the website. And in addition to this, there is a VACTERL association in the UK that have not been particularly active, I think it's fair to say, possibly because of COVID, but they're holding a 2-day event in mid-October in Staffordshire. So if anyone's interested in that, I can give them links to Gail Griffiths' website. She's organising that. And we are talking about going, one or two of us actually attending that event. So moving on to something which is really, really important, emotional well-being. Over the past 2 years, the group have discussed the emotional impact of having a rare and complex anomaly. The need for increased psychological support has become apparent. Sharing mental health challenges is not easy to talk about, and particularly with people that you've never met. So at this point, I'd like to thank the group for their honesty and their trust, because your shared information, and I'm looking at Alan here, and Alison and Caroline, it's precious and it can make a difference. And I think one of the things that we've talked about is not just how our mental health is affected by this rare anomaly, because sometimes we're not listened to, we're dismissed, but also we carry a lot of medical interventions, surgical interventions that happened in childhood, but also the impact that had on our family, on our parents and on our siblings. So it's a big area that's being explored. And in recognition of this very, very sensitive topic, we've formed a subgroup. And the members are looking at medical trauma and how requests from healthcare providers can often trigger anxiety, distress and confusion in those who've experienced medical interventions from an early age. We plan, and I haven't got a slide for it because it's being formed at the moment, it's growing. Our plan is to produce a small medical trauma card, and the reverse of it will have details of the organisation of OA TOF, but the front will have fill-in space for personal triggers, for example, intravenous cannulation, endoscopy, throat spray at the dentist, all known triggers, and followed by a section detailing how the professionals can better prepare us or the individual patients for interventions. For example, if they know in advance, making time to be able to listen properly, to give us privacy if we need it, ensuring that relaxation techniques, whether it's music or electronic games or soothing oils, are there, and recognising the need for holistic care in order to carry out assessments, investigations and treatments. Because, and that's really a big ask of the NHS with the huge problems with resources, as we all know, but actually in the longer term, if a healthcare provider knows where we're coming from when we get stressed, when they want to cannulate us or when they want to do an endoscopy, that we do need that bit of time. That may mean that if they give that time and they give us that space and they give us that recognition, that they can do that procedure for us and that we're not scooting out the door or we're not going to appointments. So in the long run, in our opinion, it's a better use of the NHS resource. So, thank you, next one. It's hugely important at this point to recognise the valuable work which has been done at an international level and acknowledge and thank our fellow adult TOFs contributions, as this slide and the next one demonstrate. The lived experience of adults and parents transitioning from paediatric to adult care with esophageal atresia and TOF. Written by Voco Wallace. So Voco isn't here today, but many of you will know that she is the author of this paper, but she's also born with OA TOF. And the publication recommends a formalised healthcare transition process, one which includes preparation for transition and having a named key worker. I'm going to look to Alan at that because I remember you talking to me about that, to manage multidisciplinary transition process. The paper also highlights the need for adults to have access to specialist health service with knowledge and understanding. And I know that we're a long way off it, but I think the important thing is that it's being recognised at international level. And then the next slide This is basically hot off the press, June 2023. Again, written consensus guidelines produced by the International Network on Esophageal Atresia in Inouïa, and I mentioned Inouïa earlier with Cincinnati. Contributions in these guidelines from Voco Wallace again and Graham Slater, both adult TOFs. The extract I'd just like to read to you is a dramatic improvement in neonatal care and paediatric surgery has been observed over the past 20 years, enabling most patients with OA-TOF to survive through adulthood. OA-TOF is no more a paediatric disease, but an adult disease with chronic problems. Severe complications that were not observed in the past because only a few patients reached adulthood are now a concern. The consensus statement will hopefully contribute to improved care and outcomes. And according to Graham, there's intention to produce a small pamphlet. It's quite a lengthy document, this. You can find it on the internet. But I think we could probably give web links to it, could we? Yeah, I'm sure. But the authors are intending to produce something small that we can all have with us in our pockets to take to our doctors. And then finally, thank you. I'd like to leave you with my personal thoughts. Together we can support TOF's organisation to continue their excellent work, to make a difference for us, particularly as we age and face the uncertainties of ailing health. We will, I think, remain a challenge to some healthcare professionals who still believe we were fixed at surgery. However, if what we do today together can help the children of tomorrow, and there's a very tiny little one here somewhere, that, in my opinion, is the best contribution we can make to our small and cherished community. Thank you for listening.